Okay, welcome back. We're on page 205 talking about validating requirements or validating the scope. And you can use validation as a way of is kind of minimizing creep. And then want to go ahead and say that sometimes it's okay to have creep as long as it's managed well. And I agree with that. I mean, you can't just say, no, I'm not listening to anything. Sorry, we've already started the project. You can't change paint color. Well, bullshit. Of course you could. You need to be able to be flexible and have changes happen. You just need to be able to manage them properly so they don't get out of control. Now, you guys know what we're talking about. You hear umpteen gazillion stories, particularly about government contracts, like, weapons systems. It was designed, we were going to get, 18 of these, whatever, aircraft carriers, tanks, whatever, fighter jets. We're going to get 18, and it's going to cost us $10 billion. Okay, now it's going to cost us $20 billion, and we're going to get 4. Because instead of doing it in a year, it's not going to take 4 years to do. So the scope creep has just gone enormous. They keep adding more things onto it, and the cost just gets higher and higher and higher. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so let's talk about validation, since that's really what this paragraph is about, not about scope creep. Validation. So this is the formal acceptance process. If I have a completed deliverable, I need to validate that part of the scope saying, yep. Now remember we talked about when you're putting together a WBS, maybe not at the individual task level, but maybe at the level 3 or 2, there ought to be some way of testing that you actually did what you said you're going to do. How do I know you met the requirement? Okay, it's simple. I don't know, I'm building a portable computer and I say it has to be under 6 pounds. Oh, okay, fine. Put it on the damn scale and tell me how much it weighs. Those kind of tests are kind of simple, right? But I have to have something that tells me that you've done what you're supposed to do. Okay. So validation requires some sort of acceptance testing. And quite frankly, could be important if your contract was designed with partial payments involved. So some sort of an inspection, some sort of an acceptance testing. Some people call this user testing. Some people call it acceptance testing. I don't like user because I involve the user over and over and over in a project, but I only do acceptance testing once. Okay, cool. So what are the outputs of this validation piece? Well, it's the deliverables, right? I have met my requirement to produce this. Okay. It also is validating the scope is where you came up and said, okay, now this change doesn't seem, this new requirement doesn't seem to be approved anywhere. Where did you guys get this? Or here is the approval process for getting this change. Because you don't want to come in and say, well, our laptop weighs 8 pounds now. And you go, whoa. Who approved that change? And they all look around and go, well, I don't know. Right? Okay, cool. So the next one is on page 207, which is controlling the scope. So that is, okay, I want a 6 pound laptop and it better be 6 pounds. And then they talk about integrated change control system. And we talked about, you can use Microsoft Project for that. You can also, the one that I keep talking about as an example is called Bugzilla. And Bugzilla is a bug tracking software package. It also can be used for tracking requirements. And requirements, just like the work package level WBSs, requirements in these systems are assigned to a person by name. Not the accounting department has to approve. It's Bob in accounting has to approve. By name. That's super duper hyper important that when you're trying to put these things together, that you know exactly what it is, who's going to do what. No ambiguity on who's doing something. Okay. And so integrated change management can help you with that. It can automate the process and it can track it and even send out notices saying, all the managers, all the people who have been assigned tasks typically respond within once a week on how the status is doing. But hey, Bob over in accounting, you haven't heard from you in like 2 weeks. What's going on? It automatically sends those kind of things out. It's not too unlike Canvas having assigned assignments and quizzes, and it'll let you know when you're late. It's basically just like that. You hear the things you're supposed to do. Okay, are you doing them? Okay. As you can probably imagine, that controlling the scope and keeping scope creep down is the number one major cause of either budgetary or time busts. If I blow the budget or blow the schedule, it's almost always because of a change that somebody requested kind of late in the game. And so controlling the scope is very, very important. They talk about suggestions for getting user input, which is pretty cool. There's a bullet list on page 208 and 209. And it starts with, you really need a selection process for selecting like features, right? You can't just have a free-for-all. You can't everybody submit their vote. It needs to be kind of a system where you kind of control it and you know what's going on, no surprises, and maybe consensus rather than voting kind of a thing. Here's what we need to do. So some sort of a formal system of selecting what things we're going to do. We're not going to do everything. We can't. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough money. Have users on the actual project team. Well, of course. We said that a gazillion times. If you leave the user out, the thing might function perfectly, but they may hate it. The next one, have regular meetings. And first time I read that, I went, meetings? Oh, God, I don't want any more dang meetings. But what they're talking about is, it's good to have regular meetings, particularly if you're not co-located. So Bob in accounting, for example, is in another building, and I never talked to Bob. But if we have regular meetings, then he might nudge somebody and say, "What the hell do you mean by this, and this?" Where if there was no meeting, no opportunity to rub elbows with the other people, you might not have good communication. So as long as meetings are designed for making excellent communication, I'll go along with them. But meetings for meeting's sake, geez, I've done enough of that in the Army. Show deliverables on a regular basis. In other words, it's sort of like your successes. Okay, we're finished with phase one. Let's show it off. Don't say, okay, thank you for your participation in phase one, and then not even tell anybody about it. Oh, we'll wait till we're done before we show it off. No, blow your trumpet, so to speak. Go talk to the corporate people and say, hey, look, we got half this project done. Don't you think it really looks cool? Okay. Don't make promises that you can't keep. Don't say, oh, yeah, well, I think we can, yeah, off the cuff remarks. Yeah, that change ought not take anything. We could probably just throw that in there. It won't cost us a dime. And then later on you find out, holy moly, was I off. So, don't make promises you can't keep. And then, if at all possible, do try to co-locate a lot of the users and developers and the stakeholders together. If they're in the one little area, like a cube farm, guy can stand up and say, okay, tell me again, what database product are we using? The guy just shouts, we're using Oracle. Oh, okay, and the guy sits back down, right? It just because they're in the same area means there's better communication. Okay. Reducing changes. Okay, so a lot of people have a configuration control board. Right? Something, and I mentioned to you guys in a previous video that some people use configuration control boards for evil purposes. Instead of trying to facilitate changes, they deliberately make it difficult. Okay? So, for example, if you want to submit a change request, first of all, it's got to be signed in triplicate by God, and the board only meets, once a quarter. That kind of stuff, right? Or you could have a change control board where you could have informal kind of scenarios. You could even have anonymous input. You can have all sorts of things where people meet on a regular basis to approve changes. So sometimes control boards are designed to prevent changes. And other times, configuration control boards are designed to facilitate changes. It's just a matter of how your organization is set up. And honestly, you would immediately get the answer to the question by merely asking how often do they meet. If they say, well, they meet about once a week or whenever they need it, you put that in the plus column, Well, they meet once a month. Really? Or once a quarter. Really? That goes in the minus column, okay? Those guys are not interested in change. Okay, so bullet list on page 209 and going on to 210 is, you kind of sort of need a requirements management system. Yeah, don't try to do this with note cards, or don't try to do this in Microsoft Word. You kind of sort of need a way to track. I've mentioned this a gazillion times, but I guess it's worth mentioning again. When somebody has a requirement, or it says, I want to have a change, not only do you document the ones that are approved, you need to document the ones that were rejected. By all means. Don't just document the ones that, okay, here's the ones we're going to do, and say nothing at all about the others. You have to say, here are the things we're going to do, and here's the things that we decided we are not going to do. It is not going to contain this. It is not going to contain this. It is not going to contain this. So both the things that are included and the things that are excluded. Okay. I'm telling you, I've done this before. Whew. Okay. Prototyping. Yep, that comes in handy. Some people use like use cases. If you're a business kind of person, you know what a use case is. A customer comes up to the counter, and so the use case is customer up at the counter. And then corporate comes up and wants to go do something at the counter. So there are different use cases. The guy's returning something, that's another use case. So these use case talks about, and these are good because it is possible. For example, you ask someone, okay, what is it you do here at the counter? And they say, well, we process this, this, and this. And that's it. That's the only 3 things you do. He goes, yep. And then it comes time, you're doing direct observation, and the guy comes in and does a return. And you go, oh, you guys do returns too? And he goes, well, yeah, of course. I said, well, you didn't put that on your list of things that you did. Oh, well, it's just so natural. We do this for a living. I forgot. Okay. So use cases draw that out. It talks about, here are the things you do here. And then the joint application development JAD kind of basically does the same kinds of things, answers the same kinds of questions. Document requirements. If you have a requirement, you need to document them, and particularly those that are disapproved have an equal requirement for documentation. How many times have I said that? Use some sort of a database. God, yes. Do testing. Yes. Test the stuff to make sure it's working. Cool. Create a review process for changes. In other words, who gets to decide whether or not we're going to do this or not? Some sort of review process. Signatures, whatever it requires. And most of the time, if there's no money involved and there's no slip in the schedule, you could probably get away with just, project manager says, yeah, okay, that's cool. And he'll sign it and move on. Otherwise, it may have to go up the corporate ladder. Oh, this will delay us by 6 weeks. Is that acceptable, or do you want us to maintain our original scope? Somebody has to decide. Emphasize one strategy they use, they talk about it in the book, is emphasizing completion dates. There's a sidebar to think about. If you keep reminding people, okay, this part's due on such and such, and this part's due on such and such, you might be able to keep scope creep down. But again, a lot of people use that kind of as a strategy for saying no to changes. No! The schedule is written in stone, and by God, we can't make changes, So, yes, emphasizing completion dates could be handy, or it could be just like the change control board. It could be used as a weapon. Okay, we're not going to make it. It's coming up on the 15-minute mark, so we'll just have one more short piece, and we will be done with this chapter.